The story of Mary the elephant is one of those tragic tales from the early 20th century that sounds almost unbelievable today, but it really happened in 1916. Mary was a working elephant for the Sparks World Famous shows, a traveling circus that roamed small towns across America, bringing excitement and wonder with its acts. Elephants were big stars back then, majestic, huge creatures who could perform tricks and awe the crowd. Mary was no exception. She was a beloved performer who could balance on tiny platforms and walk delicate tightropes, amazing audiences wherever she went. But behind the spectacle, life for circus animals was often tough. Conditions were cramped, stressful, and far from the natural environment these animals needed. On a fateful day in September 1916, during a show in Hampton, Tennessee, something went terribly wrong. The story goes that Mary, under pressure and possibly mistreated, reacted violently and killed her handler. Reports differ on the exact details, but it's generally accepted that the man was named Walter Whitey, or someone close to him. The incident shocked everyone and raised difficult questions about the treatment and safety of circus animals. What happened next is what truly marks Mary's story as one of the darkest chapters in circus history. Instead of being put down quietly or sent away, the circus owners and local authorities decided that Mary needed to be made an example of, and in a way that would send a clear message. They chose to execute her by hanging. Yes, hanging. A method more commonly reserved for humans, and an utterly brutal way to put down a giant, living creature. On September 13th, 1916, a crowd gathered as Mary was chained by her neck to a large crane. The weight and size of an elephant make this method horrifyingly inefficient and cruel, as she struggled and suffered. The execution was a public spectacle, attended by townspeople who watched in stunned silence or morbid fascination. Photographs from the event still exist today and serve as grim reminders of how differently animals were treated in the past. Mary's death sparked a range of emotions from outrage to sadness and slowly helped change attitudes about circus animals. Her story is often cited as a symbol of the cruelty inherent in the circus industry's past, a tragic example of what happens when animals are forced into unnatural roles and punished harshly for acting on instinct. Today, Mary's tale reminds us of the importance of animal welfare and the need for compassion in how we treat all creatures, especially those who cannot speak for themselves. While her life and death were tragic, her story helped shine a light on a practice that we now view as outdated and inhumane. It's a sobering piece of history that makes us reflect on progress and on how far we still need to go in protecting animals everywhere.
It was supposed to be a peaceful hike through one of the Pacific Northwest's most beautiful trails, but what began as a scenic walk along Clahane Ridge in Washington's Olympic National Park ended in an unexpected and tragic encounter with a wild animal, one that had long shown signs of aggressive behavior. On a Saturday in October, 63-year-old Robert Boardman was hiking with his wife and a friend, taking in the crisp air and sweeping views of the mountainous landscape. As they paused for a quiet lunch along the ridge, an all-too-familiar presence emerged from the brush, a mountain goat known to park rangers for its troubling behavior. This wasn't a fleeting moment of curiosity or a typical wildlife sighting. The goat, roughly 3 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing in at over 250 pounds, was no stranger to humans. In fact, it had developed an alarming habit of approaching visitors, not in fear, but with unsettling boldness. Rangers had previously tried to deter the goat's behavior. According to park spokeswoman Barb Maines, staff had used non-lethal hazing tactics, firing beanbags and tossing rocks to reinforce the message that people were to be avoided. Despite these efforts, there had been no prior attacks or direct injuries to warrant its removal from the park. That changed that day. As the goat approached, Boardman stood up and attempted to scare it off. Witnesses say he positioned himself between the animal and his companions, trying to drive it away. But the goat didn't retreat. In a sudden and violent act, it lunged at Boardman, goring him in the leg. The impact was devastating. Mountain goats, despite their seemingly docile appearance, are equipped with sharp horns and powerful builds capable of inflicting serious harm. Even more chilling, the goat reportedly stood over Boardman after the attack, refusing to leave. It wasn't until a park ranger arrived and hurled rocks at the animal that it finally backed off. giving others the chance to reach the injured hiker. Emergency services were dispatched quickly, and a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter arrived to airlift Boardman to a nearby hospital in Port Angeles. Tragically, the injuries were too severe. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The Olympic National Park community was left stunned. Not only was the incident rare, it was believed to be the first fatality caused by a mountain goat in the park's history. Mountain goats, found only in North America, generally avoid human contact. But in this case, something had clearly gone wrong. Officials believe the animal had become habituated to human presence, possibly attracted to the salt found in sweat and urine, which hikers inadvertently leave behind on trails. Over time, the goat had lost its natural wariness, a potentially dangerous development when combined with its territorial instincts. In response to the attack, park rangers made the difficult decision to track down and euthanize the goat. While a tragic outcome, it was deemed necessary to protect other visitors from a similar fate. Approximately 300 mountain goats call Olympic National Park home. While they typically roam the remote alpine areas, encounters with hikers aren't unheard of, especially in more trafficked sections of the park. Wildlife experts stress the importance of maintaining a respectful distance from all animals, no matter how harmless they may appear. Human interaction, even unintentional, can alter wild animals' behavior in ways that create risk for everyone.
On August 20th, 1994, Honolulu was expecting an ordinary day of circus thrills at the Neil S. Bladel Arena. Kids were excited for popcorn and tricks, parents were ready to enjoy some family fun, and performers were geared up for another night under the lights. But what no one anticipated was that this day would end in one of the most shocking and tragic animal rampages the world had ever seen. At the heart of it all was Tyke, a 20-year-old African elephant who had spent years living the exhausting, unnatural life of a circus performer. And on this day, she reached her breaking point. Tyke wasn't new to trouble. She had shown signs of stress and aggression before, even attempting to escape handlers in past shows. But warnings were ignored. That day in Honolulu, she was led into the ring like always, expected to do tricks under bright lights and roaring applause. But partway through the performance, something inside her snapped. In full view of the horrified crowd, Tyke turned on her trainer, Alan Campbell, trampling him to death in seconds. The audience, frozen in disbelief, watched as chaos unfolded. People screamed, ran for the exits, and children clutched their parents in panic. But Tyke wasn't done. She stormed out of the arena, crashing through the backstage area and bursting into the streets of Honolulu, still wearing parts of her circus costume. Imagine the shock. You are walking down the street, maybe sipping a coffee or heading to a shop, and suddenly a 5-ton elephant comes barreling past you, smashing cars, stomping on mailboxes and leaving a trail of destruction. For 30 minutes, Tyke roamed the streets, panicked and enraged, with police desperately trying to figure out how to stop her without causing more harm. But the ending was grim. Police ultimately opened fire, shooting Tyke nearly 100 times before she finally collapsed and died on the hot asphalt, her body riddled with bullets. Even after dozens of shots, witnesses reported that she kept trying to get up, an image that stuck painfully in the minds of many who saw it. News of the incident spread rapidly, sparking outrage across the country and beyond. People were not just horrified by the destruction, they were angry that Tyke, a wild animal, had been forced into a life of captivity, made to perform unnatural tricks, and kept under harsh control. Her rampage was seen not just as a tragedy but as a symbol of the dark side of animal entertainment, the price animals pay when they are pushed past their limits for human amusement. The aftermath brought lawsuits, protests, and intense media focus. Animal rights groups used the footage, some of which is still circulating today, as a rallying cry to end the use of wild animals in circuses. Tyke became a poster figure for animal suffering, her story haunting anyone who watched her final moments unfold. In the years that followed, many cities and countries passed laws banning or restricting the use of wild animals in circuses, pointing back to Tyke's story as one of the turning points. In the end, the Tyke incident was not just about one elephant's tragic outburst. it forced a global conversation about the ethics of animal performance, the responsibilities of entertainment industries, and the deep, often ignored costs of keeping wild animals in captivity. Tyke's rampage, though heartbreaking, left a lasting legacy, one that changed how many people see the circus forever.
Steve Irwin, the beloved Australian naturalist and global wildlife icon, lived a life defined by adventure, enthusiasm, and a deep devotion to the animal kingdom. With his unmistakable khaki outfit, boundless energy, and fearless interactions with some of the world's most dangerous creatures, Irwin wasn't just a television personality. He was a symbol of conservation and curiosity. Yet, in a tragic twist of fate, this larger-than-life figure was taken too soon by one of the least aggressive animals in the wild, a stingray. It happened on a seemingly ordinary morning in early September 2006. Off the serene coast of Port Douglas in northeast Australia, Irwin was filming an underwater documentary intended to showcase the lesser-known creatures of the ocean. Diving near a coral reef in shallow waters, he was following a stingray as part of the shoot. Suddenly, the normally docile animal lashed upward, striking him in the chest with its tail barb. The venomous spike pierced directly through his chest, likely hitting his heart. It was a freak accident, an incredibly rare encounter with deadly consequences. Irwin's team aboard his research vessel, Croc 1, sprang into action immediately. They made an emergency call to the nearest city, Cairns, and began efforts to resuscitate him as they rushed toward Low Isle, where a rescue helicopter was expected to land. But the injury was too severe. Irwin was unresponsive, and by the time paramedics reached him, he was already gone. He was just 44 years old. News of his death stunned the world. In Australia, the public and government alike were united in shock and sorrow. Politicians on both sides issued formal condolences within hours. For many Australians, Steve Irwin was more than just a television star. He was a national hero, a passionate educator, and a man who brought the country's unique wildlife to the world stage. Irwin's rise to international fame was as wild and unscripted as the animals he loved. Born on February 22, 1962, in Melbourne, Victoria, he grew up in Queensland, where his parents ran a small reptile park. From a young age, he was handling snakes, trapping crocodiles, and helping with the family business. His childhood was spent not in front of screens or school books, but in the bush, learning firsthand the behaviors of some of the world's most dangerous animals. In 1991, Irwin took over the park and renamed it Australia Zoo. That same year, he met Terry Raines, a wildlife rehabilitator from the United States. Their connection was instant. They married soon after, and their honeymoon consisted of traveling the Australian outback, capturing and relocating crocodiles. Footage from this trip would become the first episode of The Crocodile Hunter, the show that would launch them into global stardom. Over the next decade, Irwin produced nearly 50 wildlife documentaries that aired on Animal Planet and other networks, captivating a global audience of over 200 million. His style was electric. He didn't just talk about animals, he wrestled them, swam alongside them, and introduced them to viewers with genuine awe and childlike wonder. He was known for his signature catchphrase, "Crikey," a word often exclaimed during heart-stopping encounters with crocodiles, snakes, and other beasts. But beyond the showmanship was a man deeply committed to wildlife conservation. Through the Australia Zoo and the Wildlife Warriors Foundation he founded with Terry, Irwin advocated for habitat protection, species rescue, and environmental education. He was particularly passionate about crocodiles, animals he admired not just for their power, but for their role in balancing fragile ecosystems. Ironically, for someone who routinely handled venomous snakes, prowled crocodile-infested waters, and faced off with some of the most lethal creatures on Earth, Irwin had managed to avoid serious injury throughout his career. He often joked that his most painful bites came not from the predators he studied, but from birds like parrots and cockatoos. He claimed that for some reason, parrots seemed to have it out for him, nipping at his fingers and even trying to bite his nose. It was just one of the many quirks that made him so relatable to fans around the world. Steve Irwin died doing what he loved, exploring the mysteries of the natural world, camera rolling, surrounded by creatures he admired and respected. His passing was untimely and tragic, but his legacy remains enduring. Through his children, Bindi and Robert, who have followed in his conservationist footsteps, and through the continuing work of the Australia Zoo and Wildlife Warriors, Irwin's mission lives on.
In 2017, a harrowing crocodile attack in the northern part of Australia served as a stark reminder of the raw power of nature and the dangers that can lurk beneath seemingly calm waters. The incident took place in Cape Tribulation, Queensland, a region known for its lush rainforests and pristine waterways, but also for being home to some of the largest saltwater crocodiles in the world. This particular attack involved two tourists who were enjoying the natural beauty of the area when their lives suddenly took a terrifying turn. Saltwater crocodiles, often referred to as salties, are the largest reptiles on Earth and are known for their incredible strength, speed, and aggressive behavior. Measuring up to 6 meters, almost 20 feet, in length, these ancient predators have ruled northern Australia's waterways for thousands of years. While attacks on humans are relatively rare, when they do happen, the consequences can be tragic. The 2017 attack involved a crocodile estimated to be about 4 meters, 13 feet, long. The two tourists had been near a creek in Cape Tribulation when the crocodile suddenly lunged from the water. One of the tourists, a woman, was bitten severely on her leg, while the other, a man, was pulled underwater but managed to escape with injuries. The incident was captured on video, which quickly went viral, bringing widespread attention to the dangers of crocodile habitats. This attack not only shocked the local community but also prompted renewed warnings and safety advice from Australian wildlife authorities. The Northern Territory and Queensland governments have long emphasized the need for caution around crocodile-infested waters. But incidents like this highlight how quickly a seemingly peaceful environment can turn deadly. Tourists are advised to stay well away from waterways known to be inhabited by saltwater crocodiles and to always follow local safety guidelines. One of the key takeaways from this incident is the importance of respecting wildlife and understanding that these creatures are wild animals with instincts that can be unpredictable and dangerous. Saltwater crocodiles do not view humans as friends or neighbors. To them, humans are potential prey, especially when people venture too close to their territory. In response to the attack, authorities took swift action to capture and remove the crocodile believed to be responsible. This measure is part of a broader strategy to manage crocodile populations near populated areas to reduce the risk of future attacks. However, experts caution that complete elimination of risk is impossible. These animals are a natural and essential part of Australia's ecosystem. The 2017 crocodile attack on tourists in Cape Tribulation serves as a sobering reminder of the balance between adventure and safety when exploring the wild. Australia's natural beauty attracts millions of visitors each year, but it also demands respect for its wildlife and the environment. The crocodile's power and presence in these northern waterways are a testament to the untamed spirit of the region and a warning that nature's forces are not to be underestimated. For travelers and locals alike, the message is clear: admire from a safe distance, stay informed, and always prioritize safety when near crocodile habitats. The wild may be captivating, but it is also unpredictable, and understanding that is crucial for ensuring that encounters with wildlife remain safe and memorable for all the right reasons.
In the bustling heart of Guangdong Province, China, inside a well-known restaurant famous for its exotic delicacies, Chef Peng Fan was preparing a dish that was both revered and feared: snake soup made from the highly venomous Indochinese spitting cobra. Snake meat, considered a delicacy in many parts of China, is believed to have medicinal properties and is often served in upscale establishments. On this particular evening, Peng was crafting a dish that demanded precision and courage. He had handled venomous reptiles before, and this cobra was no exception. In a practiced motion, he severed the snake's head, placing it aside as he moved on to clean and dice the rest of the body. With the head separated from the body, the danger should have been gone, or so it seemed. Roughly 20 minutes passed as Chef Peng worked in the kitchen, unaware that the real threat was still very much present. When he reached to dispose of the severed cobra's head, it suddenly lunged, driven by lingering reflexes, and sank its fangs into his hand. Though decapitated, the cobra's head was still capable of a deadly final act. Its venom, one of the most potent in the reptile world, entered Peng's bloodstream almost instantly. Within moments, paralysis began to set in. Colleagues heard a commotion and rushed in, only to find the chef already collapsing. Despite frantic efforts to save him and desperate calls for medical help, Peng died before the anti-venom could be administered. The restaurant fell into stunned silence as patrons and staff tried to process the horrifying scene. One diner, Lin Sun, who had been celebrating his wife's birthday, later recounted the chaos that erupted from the kitchen. They heard sudden screams and panicked shouts for a doctor, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. The police, called to investigate, were met with a bizarre but tragic case. Officials confirmed that Peng had died from the cobra's venom, delivered in a bite from a severed head, a rare and shocking occurrence. Though horrifying, experts later explained that such an event was biologically plausible. Snakes, particularly venomous ones like the spitting cobra, can exhibit reflexive behavior long after death. It's not uncommon for a decapitated snake's head to remain capable of biting and injecting venom for up to an hour after being separated from its body. While the body is effectively dead, basic neural activity can continue in the head, one herpetologist noted. This means the fangs can still deploy venom, making them just as dangerous post-mortem. The Indo-Chinese spitting cobra, native to Southeast Asia, is a creature of both fear and fascination. Known for its ability to spit venom at predators from a distance and grow up to 5 feet in length, its potent toxin can cause paralysis, tissue necrosis, and death by asphyxiation, if not treated immediately. In traditional Chinese medicine, however, its flesh is considered valuable, believed to provide health benefits that attract diners seeking something both adventurous and therapeutic. For Chef Peng, cooking such a dish was not an unusual task. He had likely prepared similar meals many times before, but this time, the cobra struck back, literally, from beyond the grave. Following the incident, authorities ruled Peng's death as a tragic accident. It is a highly unusual case, but it appears to be just that, an accident, a police spokesperson stated. He prepared the snake himself and was simply unlucky. In the wake of the tragedy, Peng Fan's restaurant closed temporarily out of respect, and fellow chefs across the region took extra precautions when working with venomous species.
Once upon a time, in the splashy, jumpy, dolphin-flipping world of SeaWorld Orlando, lived a giant killer whale named Tilikum. When I say giant, I mean huge. This dude was 22 feet long and weighed over 12,000 pounds. That's like stacking a bunch of cars together and slapping on a dorsal fin. But Tilikum wasn't just any whale. He was a star performer, the headliner of the famous Dine with Shamu shows where tourists could eat overpriced chicken fingers while watching trainers hug, kiss, and surf on these majestic creatures. One of those trainers was Dawn Branchot, a seasoned pro with years of experience, a bright smile, and a deep love for the animals she worked with. Everyone loved Dawn. She was the face of SeaWorld, and she truly believed in what she was doing. But behind the scenes, things weren't all glitter and fish buckets. Tilikum, though a crowd favorite, carried a dark past. He had already been involved in 2 deaths before even arriving at SeaWorld. Back in the 1990s at Sealand of the Pacific in Canada, Tilikum and 2 female orcas were linked to the death of a young trainer who fell into the pool. Fast forward to SeaWorld in 1999, and a man who snuck into the park at night was found dead, draped across Tilikum's back. Yikes. Still, Tilikum stayed in the show lineup, mostly because, well, he was valuable for breeding and packed the stadium seats. Then came February 24th, 2010, the day everything changed. During what was supposed to be a routine interaction, Dawn was standing at the edge of the pool with Tilikum when, in a sudden and shocking move, he grabbed her either by the ponytail or arm, eyewitness accounts vary, and yanked her into the water. What followed was an absolutely chaotic, heartbreaking scene. Rescue teams rushed in, but Tilikum refused to let go. Despite desperate efforts, Dawn drowned, and her body suffered multiple injuries caused by the orca's sheer power. It was a devastating, gut-punch moment that left SeaWorld and the public reeling. The fallout was intense. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It sparked a global firestorm. People wanted answers. Why was Tilikum, with his violent history, still performing? Was keeping orcas in captivity pushing them to mental breaking points? Cue the rise of the now iconic 2013 documentary Blackfish, which tore the lid off SeaWorld's practices and slammed the industry for keeping highly intelligent, emotionally complex animals in concrete tanks for human entertainment. Blackfish didn't just ruffle feathers, it blew up the conversation. Celebrities spoke out. Musicians canceled SeaWorld gigs. Attendance dropped. SeaWorld's reputation took a nosedive, and eventually the park ended its orca breeding program and phased out theatrical whale shows altogether. As for Tilikum, he spent the rest of his days mostly away from performances, living in semi-retirement until his death in 2017. His story became a symbol. Some saw him as a villain, but many saw him as a tragic figure, a wild creature turned into a performer, a life of captivity that possibly fueled his unpredictable behavior. The debate over marine mammal captivity still rages on, and Tilikum's name is forever etched in that conversation. So yes, it's a story packed with drama, heartbreak, ethical dilemmas, and a massive orca who became a global headline. It's one of those moments where the glittery world of entertainment collided head-on with some seriously uncomfortable truths. And whether you side with the trainers, the whales, or the protesters, there's no denying one thing. The tale of Tilikum and Don Branchot changed the conversation about marine parks forever.
In the heart of Malawi's central Dawa district, a wave of terror swept through 4 remote villages when a mysterious beast emerged from the shadows, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. What began as whispers of strange animal sightings quickly spiraled into panic, forcing nearly 4,000 villagers to abandon their homes in fear. Entire families fled to seek refuge at a community hall in the district headquarters, clutching whatever possessions they could carry and hoping the nightmare would pass. The predator, suspected to be a rabid hyena, descended on the region like a phantom of the bush. It struck with terrifying brutality, killing 3 people and maiming 16 others. Its attacks were not just deadly, they were grotesque. The victims didn't just suffer fatal wounds. Many were found with crushed skulls, their intestines and private parts torn out. Among the dead were 2 elderly women and a 3-year-old child, their lives stolen in the most horrifying manner imaginable. Survivors were left permanently scarred. Some lost both legs and hands. Others were blinded or left without ears. One woman had her mouth and nose completely ripped away. The beast didn't just kill, it mutilated. Those who survived carried more than physical wounds. They bore the trauma of an encounter that blurred the line between animal attack and supernatural horror. As panic gripped the district, security forces sprang into action. Dozens of armed officers were deployed to the area, patrolling the villages and offering protection to those brave enough to return. The animal itself, however, remained elusive. Rangers and police worked together to track it through the rugged, mountainous terrain, but the predator seemed to vanish into the wilderness after each attack, leaving only blood and fear behind. Wildlife authorities, including Parks and Wildlife Officer Leonard Sifu, began examining the survivors' injuries in an effort to confirm the nature of the beast. While all signs pointed to a rabid hyena, many locals rejected this theory. They argued that the creature did not look like a typical hyena. Its limbs were longer, its movements more cunning, too calculated, too deliberate to be explained by rabies alone. Adding to the mystery was the chilling belief shared by many villagers that this was not a new attacker, but the resurrection of a previous nightmare. Just a year earlier, in a similarly chilling incident, another beast had killed 5 people and injured over 20 before being hunted down and killed by game rangers and paramilitary police. That creature had also been identified as a rabid hyena, though many questioned the diagnosis. Villagers noted inconsistencies in its appearance, unusually long limbs and strange behavior, and some believed that it was no ordinary animal at all. Among the villagers, convinced of the creature's supernatural origins, was Morgan Amoni, a 30-year-old local who claimed to have seen it up close. He insisted the beast bore an uncanny resemblance to the one slain the year before. Now at Lilongwe Central Hospital, tending to his injured father, he believed the animal had returned from the grave, driven by vengeance. His words echoed the fears of many in the region. In a country where legends of shapeshifters and witchcraft still weave through everyday life, the idea that the beast was more than just a rabid animal gained traction quickly. Some believed it to be the product of dark magic, an evil spirit inhabiting the body of a hyena to punish the living. While the experts stuck to biological explanations, even they acknowledged the unusual nature of the attacks. Dr. Matthias Joshua, the Dowa District Health Officer, confirmed the appalling extent of the injuries, describing cases so severe that even seasoned medical staff were shaken. This wasn't a simple case of an animal on a rampage. It was carnage of an almost surreal kind. Despite the horror, some residents have begun returning home, aided by the presence of armed patrols and the hope that the worst is over. But the fear lingers. The beast has yet to be caught, and its shadow still looms over the hills of Dowa. Until it is captured, or until the attacks stop completely, the villagers sleep with one eye open, haunted by the memory of the faceless predator that tore through their homes and their peace.
The story of Tatiana the tiger at the San Francisco Zoo is one of tragedy, controversy, and hard lessons, learned a sobering reminder of the unpredictable relationship between humans and wild animals, even within the seemingly safe confines of a zoo. On December 25, 2007, what should have been an ordinary Christmas evening turned into a nightmare when Tatiana, a 300-pound Siberian tiger, escaped from her enclosure and launched a fatal attack on 3 young men. 17-year-old Carlos Sousa Jr. lost his life in the attack, while brothers Emrit Pal and Kulbir Dhaliwal suffered serious injuries but survived. Police eventually shot and killed Tatiana near the zoo cafe, ending the immediate threat, but opening the door to a flood of questions, lawsuits, and soul-searching. How did a tiger escape from what was supposed to be a secure enclosure? That became the first focus of investigators, and what they discovered shocked many. The wall surrounding Tatiana's open-air exhibit was only 12.5 feet tall, significantly below the 16.5-foot minimum recommended by zoo safety experts. Investigators found claw marks and broken concrete near the top, suggesting that Tatiana had physically leapt or climbed out. While Siberian tigers are powerful and athletic, experts had long assumed such an escape was unlikely, if not impossible. But the facts on the ground proved otherwise, forcing the zoo to reckon with some uncomfortable truths about its design and safety protocols. But the escape itself wasn't the only issue under the microscope. Reports emerged that the Dhaliwal brothers and Sousa may have been taunting the tiger before the attack, yelling, gesturing, or even throwing objects into the enclosure. While the exact details remain disputed, many people saw the possibility of provocation as a critical factor. After all, Tatiana was a wild animal, and even in captivity, her instincts and capacity for violence were never far below the surface. This wasn't even her first violent encounter. Just 1 year earlier, Tatiana had attacked a zookeeper during a public feeding session, mauling the keeper's arm so severely that it required multiple surgeries. At that time, the zoo was fined by Kalosha and pledged to improve its safety measures, but the Christmas 2007 incident showed that deeper systemic problems had not been addressed. The legal fallout was intense. The Sousa family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, ultimately reaching a settlement with the zoo. The Dhaliwal brothers, despite facing public criticism over their alleged role in provoking the tiger, also received a $900,000 settlement. Meanwhile, the zoo itself scrambled to make sweeping changes, raising enclosure walls, reinforcing barriers, adding clear warning signs to visitors, and overhauling emergency procedures. Across the country, other zoos took notice, revisiting their own safety standards and animal containment strategies to ensure that nothing like the Tatiana incident could happen on their grounds. Public reaction was sharply divided. On one side, many mourned the tragic loss of young Carlos Sousa Jr., a promising teenager whose life was cut short under horrifying circumstances. On the other side, animal rights advocates and wildlife experts pointed fingers at the zoo's inadequate design, arguing that Tatiana was a victim too, a powerful creature confined in an artificial setting, provoked beyond her limits, and ultimately killed for acting on instincts she could never fully suppress. Online memorials sprang up not only for Carlos, but also for Tatiana, with many people reflecting on the complex moral and ethical issues surrounding the captivity of large, dangerous predators. Today, Tatiana's story serves as a cautionary tale. It reminds us that no matter how much we try to contain and control wild animals, they remain unpredictable, powerful, and deserving of respect. It also forces us to look inward, questioning how we interact with animals in captivity, what responsibilities we hold as visitors, and what standards institutions must uphold to protect both human and animal lives. The San Francisco Zoo has changed, and so have many others. But the memory of that Christmas night and the lessons it delivered continue to echo in zoo communities around the world.
On a warm summer Sunday in Campbellton, New Brunswick, two little boys, Noah, just 4 years old, and his older brother Connor, days away from turning 7, spent the day immersed in joy. They splashed around in a pool, visited animals at a family friend's farm, and even had the thrill of steering a tractor. It was a perfect day for two energetic, fun-loving kids. That night, the boys settled down to sleep in the upstairs apartment of Jean-Claude Savoie, the family friend who owned the farm, and also a pet store, Reptile Ocean, located just below the apartment. But as the quiet hours of early Monday morning set in, the unimaginable happened. A massive African rock python, more than 10 feet long and weighing close to 100 pounds, escaped from its enclosure. Somehow, the snake managed to slither through a ceiling vent and into the building's ductwork. The enclosure, built like a glass aquarium, had extended up to the ceiling, but it hadn't been secured enough to contain the powerful reptile. Above the living room where the boys were sleeping, the ceiling suddenly gave way. The snake came crashing down. When Savoy walked into the room the next morning, he expected to see the boys sleeping peacefully. Instead, he was met with a nightmarish scene. The ceiling had collapsed, and the massive snake was coiled in the same room as the lifeless bodies of Noah and Connor. He managed to locate the snake in a hole, pin it down, and return it to its cage, but it was too late. The boys had been killed during the night, likely while they slept. Authorities arrived quickly and cordoned off the pet shop with yellow police tape. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, launched a criminal investigation, although they stressed the unusual nature of the case. This wasn't a typical crime scene. It was one involving a reptile, and one that left experienced officers visibly shaken. The python was euthanized, and post-mortem examinations confirmed that the boys had died of asphyxiation. Their small bodies were also covered in puncture wounds consistent with snake bites. The town of Campbellton, a quiet community, was rocked by the tragedy. Diane Fournier, a neighbor who had known the boys, expressed disbelief. "They were brothers," she said. "They played in my yard with my dogs all the time." Her words echoed the thoughts of many in the neighborhood. No one could imagine that such horror had unfolded in their midst. Jean-Claude Savoie, a longtime friend of the boys' family, was devastated. He told Canadian media he had no idea the snake could make its way through the ventilation system. He had thought the enclosure was secure, believing the python too large to maneuver through the ducts. His own son, who had been sleeping in a separate room, was unharmed. Savoy's connection to reptiles dated back years. A 1996 report by ZooCheck and the World Society for the Protection of Animals described him as a young, enthusiastic collector of exotic animals. Reptile Ocean was his commercial venture, a place where reptiles were showcased and sold. After the tragedy, the pet store's Facebook page briefly posted condolences before being shut down. In the aftermath, questions about exotic animal ownership in residential areas were reignited. While deaths caused by large constrictor snakes like pythons are rare, they're not unheard of. The Humane Society has documented 17 snake-related fatalities in the U.S. since 1978, with many more injuries and close calls reported across North America. Their report warned of a growing problem: pet pythons, boa constrictors, and anacondas escaping into neighborhoods, endangering people and local wildlife. Despite the emotional weight of the incident, a Canadian court later cleared Jean-Claude Savoie of criminal negligence. The judge ruled that Savoie had not foreseen the possibility of the snake escaping through the duct, nor had he acted recklessly. The tragedy was deemed a horrible accident.